Show, and Eddy County Commissioner John Henry is with us, and you've got some interesting statistical information. What did the commissioners learn about yesterday?
Yes, so of course yesterday was our revenue report, so that's always interesting to see. So for September, our oil and gas revenues came in at $9,998,000. That should be the kind of the end of that $100 barrels. I think that was probably the last month. That was in the low hundreds at that point. So we do expect that to drop some, not significantly, but we obviously will see a bit of a drop, because I think then we went into pretty much the high 80s after that, and then of course after that now we're in the low 80s. And then our regular GRT, general fund GRT, came in at 4.5, a little over $4.5 million. So continuing to see really strong GRTs in Eddy County, which is really good. That's showing a healthy industry. That's also showing healthy towns, because the GRTs for both towns are staying strong and creating a lot of GRT for us. Now, some of the things that I thought was really interesting, Roberta did kind of an oil distribution to kind of show how this oil affects the state, affects the counties, and kind of how it comes back to us. So and if you can see, this is, so it does take me a second because I don't wear glasses yet, but I might should after reading this little tiny deal. But Eddy County's production for the state, so we produce in Eddy County in October, we'll just go with October numbers, 41.42. They're fairly consistent, right? July, August, September, all 41 point something percent.
This is of all oil and gas
all
produced
oil and gas
in New
produced
Mexico?
in New Mexico.
Okay.
Percent that Lee County produces runs about 53%-ish. You know, so it varies a little bit between 53 and 52.3. So between the two, obviously, which I don't think that's a big surprise to anyone, that we're a little over 90% of oil produced in the state of New Mexico. Now, the percent of that distribution, so the monies that the state gets, so about 86.3% the state keeps of that money that is produced out of that distribution. And the portion that comes back to our county, so we produce 41%. The percent of that money that comes back averages about 1.7 to 1.8% of those monies come back to the county of Eddy County, which is and then Lee County gets about 3%. So I think that's what why is that interesting? I think that's been why the Arrowhead studies were created, why so many things, when folks want to say how dangerous and how bad oil and gas is, a small percentage comes back to the county. Well, where does the rest of that go? Well, we all know it goes to fund schools. A big chunk of that's going to go fund schools, not just our teacher schools, the entire state schooling system. That's where those monies are going. They're going to so many other avenues that the state has to have, and they don't have an answer. So that's why I kind of laughed when you said, what's the city and county plan? What's the state's plan? I mean, 90% of their monies are coming from these two counties, or not 90% of oil and gas is produced here in these two counties. If you take that away, that's got to be, I always hear these numbers, is that 46, 49, 42% of their budget is gone. What are you going to do to replace it? How are they going to replace it? I mean, we see stuff on the ballot right now of them trying to get into a permanent fund for schooling for young. Well, right now you have a surplus. You have a massive amount of oil and gas monies coming. Why aren't we using those monies to try to shore up some of these things? Why are we having to? You're taking monies out of stuff. You're already creating a ton of money. And you know, Commissioner McCutcheon and I have said, now granted, that's when the public was allowed to go to the Roundhouse, but when we would sit in some of those committees, some of the things that were said is, oh, well, they're taking from our kids. Really? They're the only ones contributing to the schools. So if you take that money away and we're worried about education like we say we are, and we should be,
right?
Why are we demonizing and attacking the one industry that is actually paying for the bulk of our schooling in the state of New Mexico? So really confusing, but I thought those were super interesting numbers. They are for me, because you just see the state keeps so much of it and just give just a tiny bit back to the counties. And why is it important? Why is that? Why do we try to get that number better? And we've had a lot of great discussions with a lot of folks at the state level of, hey, look, when our infrastructure is better, more sound, and moves better, obviously things move safer, quicker, more efficient. which would in turn, so if you're a business person, the more efficient you can make something happen, the more likely you are to make a better profit. Well, that would be the same thing here. If you're helping these folks in industry and in these counties move around safer and easier, you're more likely to get a bigger return on your product. So you could even drive that number maybe better because you're making it easier. Instead, we do the opposite. Now, I think the county, which is some more statistics I'll tell you in a minute, there was a lot of cool stuff yesterday that Roberta just kept throwing stuff at us, and I'm like, wow, that's super great. I can't wait to tell people because, yeah, when we start doing that as a state, now let me curtail that into what the county's kind of done when I'm talking about infrastructure. So if you look at our roads over the last 4 years, so in 2019, 2020, Eddy County spent about $6 million on our roads. So in the last 3 years, so 2020 to 21 was about 32, almost 33 million. Fiscal year 2021 to 22 was almost 39, almost $40 million. And then 2022 to 23 to this point, our budget is going to be about $37 million. So you can see from 6 million. Now, granted, some of that was FEMA. I mean, you do have some FEMA monies in there of 4,500,000, 16 million. So it makes those, but still we're well over $20 million that we have been putting into our roads every single year, trying to shore them up. And so after the commission meeting yesterday, I took about an hour and a half, 2 hours with Jason Burns, and we drove the West Loop. We drove some of these roads that folks are saying are oh my gosh, what are y'all doing? Man, our roads are looking really great. That West Loop, when it's completed, is going to be a fantastic help for everybody in the county because you can get from one side of Carlsbad to the other. When we were done, and I'm driving on a dirt road at this point, right?
Right.
It's not an easy little clean road yet. To get to that other side to the airport almost was, I said, my gosh, we're already on this side? He goes, yeah, it's going to be incredible. So we are going to be able to move people around the county so much easier and so much safer. And I think that's the key to it all. Obviously, we want industry to make money and be safe. But the safety part is crucial. I was driving to a commission meeting the other day, and they were green energy. They were bringing one of those wind turbines through the middle of town. And right there in Carlsbad, and I don't know the streets because I'm not good at streets in Carlsbad, but where it gets real tight on that turn when you're going down Main Street, Carlsbad. Anyways, they had one of those wind turbines, and there was a parade behind them because it takes everything it's got to get that corner. And so I asked them, I said, well, how often does that happen? And they said, oh, it's obviously spurt. I mean, you might have a whole bunch at one time, and then you won't see one for a couple weeks. But if you take those and all the other big traffic moving through the middle of town, that's not safe. It's our job to make sure that we try to make it safe for citizens in town and make it more efficient for industry so they're not having to. I'm sure they don't want to drive that turbine right through the middle of town or their trucks or anything else. So when we get this loop created, I think it's going to really help movement through Carlsbad, which is obviously where the bulk of this activity is happening at the moment. So pretty exciting, but I thought those numbers were fascinating when folks say, oh, well, you're not doing much with the roads. Well, we're dumping a ton of money. So if you look at total road, how much that affects. So total roads in 2019, they were able to do 217. 178 of that was locals. We got locals, collectors, and arterials, which are three kind of the way they look at their road systems. We were able to do 276, 112. We got over 100 this year. So you're talking 500, 600, 700 miles worth of road. Now, we don't have that many roads, obviously, but what he's doing is one of the roads we were driving, which is a really, really heavily used truck road. They did a chip seal, and then they did a tom, which a tom, come to find out, is basically you let that chip seal sit for a year, and then you come back afterwards and put a coating on top of it, basically oil, to keep it flexible and not let it dry out. And he says, we are getting so much more use out of those. And I said, okay, well, help me break that down. He said, well, it's interesting. Then he was telling double pins and pins, and I'm not fully there yet. But, you know, we're talking dollars to do those types of things, $1 to $2. Whereas to do a tom, if we stay up with the maintenance, these costs will eventually go down because your maintenance, if you do that, he said it's like 46 cents. I'm like, oh, my gosh. So now that we're correcting them and actually getting our roads in the shape that they should be in, and like I say every time, you give me the disclaimer, I know everyone's road's not perfect yet, but I think we're a lot closer than we were. And now with this maintenance program, I think we're even going to catch up more. And
Yeah.
so my point of the whole thing is we dump money back into the county, which obviously makes sense. That's our job, right? I mean, that's what as commissioners we do. But if the state would dump money back in and see those same kind of benefits, I think they would see a bigger benefit as well.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of priorities and where are we helping keep safe and to continue to generate the revenues to make all these other things work.
Sure. Well, I think part of the issue is anytime you have political leaders making decisions, they are influenced by people within their districts. And so
Right.
people in different parts of the state are going to lobby their legislators to, we need to have this done, we need to have that done. So you got all that going on up there that the legislatures have to deal with.
Yeah.
And then they pass on their directives to the agencies that are actually responsible for carrying this out.
Right.
Perhaps that's why it takes 10 years to get a traffic light.
Right.
Yeah. Like it did for the one that we got here. But then you've got the energy policy. You go back to the Richardson administration, there's been this big push in this state of New Mexico to go green.
Right.
And join California and some other states in going green. And so you've got this conflict between the benefits of the oil and gas industry and the revenue it generates for the state conflicting with the green energy policies that the states want to push. They need the money, and I'm sure they're aware they need the money.
Yeah.
And it would be helpful if they would help with the roads and infrastructure and to have more oil and gas revenue generated. But it kind of goes against their overall philosophy they have on the direction that we need to go as a state. It's
and
there's so many different people that have to try to.
And what you said is exactly right, and I think that's why Eddy County a couple years ago, and this is right before COVID hit and kind of derailed some of it, but even during COVID we were able to do somewhat. That's why it was so important for Eddy County to take that arrowhead and take it to your school boards, not just ours, take it across the state to school boards, to city council meetings, to other commission meetings, because you're right, those legislatures need to listen to them. Obviously, that's who they represent, and I 100% agree with that. That's who they should represent. That's why you're elected. But those folks have to understand where their money's coming from. And I think, unfortunately, there is a huge percent of population in New Mexico, especially up north, that don't understand that this evil oil and gas that they keep talking about is funding their school, that they're representing, which kind of makes me worried, because if you're a school board member or something along, you should understand how those revenues are coming in, and they don't. They just, it's just here. Well, look what the state did. Okay, but where'd the state get the money? And so by doing that, I do think we have been able to see some wins in that. You are seeing some towns. I get stopped on a regular basis, whether I was up at the municipality league as a mayor or as a commissioner. Commissioners and or other mayors or other folks come up to me and say, hey, we really appreciate this or that, or because they're starting to see, and I think there are more that are getting it than not at this point. And so that's why when you say what can we do about it, that's what our county's doing about it. We are taking the message out there everywhere that'll possibly let us in the door to say, hey, look, here's where it's coming from, and here's why it's important, and here's why you should care. So when you are talking to your legislators, make sure they understand, hey, we're getting our money from there. If y'all take that away with this bill, where are we going to get it?
That's right. How much has the cost of materials for the roads, the whatever it is, the seal or the chip seal or whatever,
Right.
Have you had to look at some pretty significant increases just in the costs of the materials to do these road projects?
Yes, there's been, and I couldn't tell you a lot of them. Wes did give us an update on one of our little intersections. I think he had it budgeted a while back at, I want to say 1.5. The new estimates are coming in at a little over 2, so it's gone up $500,000 to $1 million for that project. So, and that's not engineered. It's already been engineered. That's a material type cost. So, yeah, you are seeing costs go up. I mean, the cities and counties have to pay just like everyone else. We're not immune to the inflation. I like what you called it, the inflation
Creation
bill. Yeah, thanks. That was fantastic wording there. So
I'm sure I heard it someplace
yeah.
else. Yeah.
So we feel the same thing in trying to make our monies go further the best we can to benefit the citizens. So
We've got about 3 minutes left in the hour. Were there some other notes of interest from the commission meeting you wanted to share with us today?
oh yeah, there's a ton of neat stuff we talked about. But then there's a lot of other things I'd like to cover. So, a couple of real quick things
Yeah.
that I think are interesting. Obviously, we can go to a city's levels. Lots of fun activities coming up for the cities, and especially we've got Balloons and Tunes this weekend in Artesia. That'll bring a lot of folks, and that's the goal. We talked about lodger's tax a little bit yesterday on the commission meeting. How do we continue to bring people in? Carlsbad obviously has an inn with the Carlsbad Caverns. That's a huge attraction. But when Artesia and the cities can bring in folks with events, so really glad to see that the Balloons and Tunes. I think that we're expecting quite a few people to come into our county and our communities and have a good time, spend money from outside. That's nice to see it come in and not leak out. So really good stuff there. Obviously want to congratulate all the teams performing really well. We've got playoffs coming up. Continue to pray for safe travels and obviously good outcomes. It's always fun to watch them. And a big congratulations to you. I mean, what a fantastic, we say it a lot, and I don't mean to say it just to make you feel good about yourself. I hope you do a little bit, but it's really neat to hear folks say on a regular basis, hey, we didn't know we could watch it, and now they're watching every game. Maybe that's why your viewership's up, because like you said, people are finally discovering how great a picture quality it is. And it's wonderful because I love that folks in the county, there's a lot of Carlsbad folks, and they probably wouldn't admit to it publicly all the time, but they admit to me that, hey, we watch the Bulldog games because the picture quality is great and they really enjoy it. So whether it be football, volleyball, basketball, band, y'all cover it all. And we're just lucky to be in a county and cities that really do care about our citizens and want the best for what we've got.
Appreciate that. What the commissioner is referring to, I mentioned off air, is we had, and I don't know if I said this on the air or not, but we had over 13,400 viewer minutes of content in the month of October, which is a record for us. We've never gone over 10,000 before, and we didn't go over 10,000 by a little bit. We went over 10,000 by a lot.
Right.
And that's viewer minutes. So every time somebody connects and watches for at least a minute, then it's counted as a viewer minute. And of course, multiple people will pull up a game and watch a game. So if that's the viewer minutes, then you can, I'm sure there's a 2.5 multiplier or something like that to how many people were actually watching content on the channel.
Yeah.
So we're pretty excited about that.
Yeah.
It's
well, and it's neat. It's not just sports. It's everything. Y'all cover it all.
We do a lot. I wish we could cover more, but
I don't know how you could at this point.
cloning.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. We need to go to the news. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you.
This is